this is Mindy Strong, and I have created this video to help you understand basic economics. If you're studying for the Series 65 and you're at the basic economics section, this should be helpful. Let me know if it is. I am trying to create a video on every single section that will be tested on in the Series 65. Hope this helps. Let's go. Okay, basic economics. First of all, we have the business cycle. So the business cycle involves the four stages that the economy goes through. So we have expansion, prosperity, recession, and recovery. After recovery, we go back to expansion. And then we go expansion, prosperity, recession, recovery. It's just a cycle. It's predictable. It happens. It is the job of the Federal Reserve and other bodies to help control it as much as possible. There are so many external factors, obviously, that they have to consider, but let's look at it as a whole. First of all, the gross domestic product is something that is looked at as all goods and services produced in that country. Okay. Now, during periods of expansion, the gross domestic product is going to increase. Duh. And following expansion, we have a time of prosperity. After prosperity is recession. Now, the definition of a recession is if there are falling interest rates for two sequential quarters. So if it drops for the interest rates drop for two sequential quarters, then you are said to be in a recession. After recession comes recovery. After recovery comes expansion, and then the cycle starts again. There are two types of policies that try to help affect this cycle. One is fiscal policy. Those are changes to government policy that affect economic activity. Think in terms of laws and taxes and things. That's government policy. And then there's monetary policy. The Federal Reserve takes over. They take action to either loosen or tighten the money supply. When money aggregates increase, that term means there's money in banks. The money in the banks has increased, which means more money can be loaned out to commercial banks, which means more money can be loaned out to you and me. Whee! The Federal Reserve sets the reserve requirement and the discount rate, and they do a couple of other things I'm going to discuss later. So we have fiscal policy, think of government effect. Monetary policy is going to be the Federal Reserve taking action, infusing more or draining money from the banks. Okay, next we have consumer price index. This is a measure of inflation, which obviously is utilized when it comes to those two policies and the business cycle. A consumer price index is selected goods and services like housing costs, food, clothing, medical. It's a way to indicate how we're doing inflation-wise. What is the cost, the housing costs, and the cost of food and clothing and medical, and how does that look? And that is a good indication of where we are in terms of inflation. Here's an inflation fact. Inflation tends to go up during economic expansion. Why? Everything's expanding. People are not concerned with the price increases. They're willing to pay more because they have more. This leads to higher bond prices and lower yields. Okay? Got it. Next, there is a very big difference between a real interest rate and a nominal interest rate. When you are determining basically how much money you have or how far your money can go, you have to consider inflation. So when determining the real interest rate of something, you must take the nominal interest rate and subtract the inflation rate, because the inflation rate is going to make something more expensive. Once you subtract that, you will obtain your real interest rate. Effects of inflation. Okay, when inflation rates go up, there are two main things that go down: fixed income securities and common stock. Inflation goes up, fixed income securities and common stock go down. So what? Well, during periods of inflation, you're not going to want to buy fixed income securities or common stock. You're going to want to look into more tangible assets and money market instruments, and real estate tend to move with inflation and be more liquid. Deflation, the opposite of inflation, is when the interest rates fall, and this obviously is going to raise the price of fixed income securities. So during periods of deflation, getting a fixed income security would be a great idea. But the role of the Federal Reserve, I mentioned it earlier, with monetary policy. Let's look at it. So they control the supply of credit in the economy. Again, they conduct open market operations, so they actually give money to the banks, which allows the banks to give money to you and I. Everybody's happy. They set the reserve requirements. That means how much money the banks have to keep in their reserves. They set the discount rate. That is the rate they are charged for that money. And they set the margins. So the Federal Reserve has a way to try to help control inflation and deflation. Balance of payment. So now what we're going to talk about is exporting versus importing. Okay, we're going to use the United States and China in this example. So first of all, think of exports as the United States sold something and made money. So every time we, the United States, sell something to another country, we are making money. Every time we import or buy something from another country, we are spending money. We are paying for it. So it makes logical sense that if the United States is exporting more than importing, we are going to have a positive balance of payments. That is a good sign, and we can expect our economy to show that with stock prices rising. The opposite, if we are importing more than we are exporting, this is going to lead to a negative balance of payments. That is not as much of a good sign, and we can expect the stock prices to fall. Logic. This is logical. We don't need to memorize a bunch of facts. We need to understand concepts. So let's look at this in another way. And I use China and the United States. And I wanted to use this to show you the vocabulary and the phrases you can expect to be associated with this. So we are talking about trading surplus versus trading deficit. Trading surplus is also known as the exporting of goods. Okay, so the United States is selling goods to China, which means the money is coming to us. And then we have the opposite, which is the deficit. We are buying things from China. The money is going to them. I put a plus next to surplus because, again, this is a positive sign. When we are exporting more, we have a trading surplus. And I put a minus next to deficit because when we are importing more, we have a trade deficit. Make sense? Okay. Now let's look at the value of currency relating one country to another. Okay. So if a country is worried that the value of their currency is decreasing relative to another currency, the value of the dollar is decreasing versus the Chinese yen, the country that is worried should buy their own currency and sell the other country's currency. The country that is worried, if they are worried about the value of their currency, they should buy their own currency and sell the other country's currency. You buy your own, you sell the foreign. Okay? And I want to just give you another example and another visualization of these changes in the trade deficit that we talked about. So these are all ways that the trade deficit will be widened. Okay? We talked about the first one, exports. If the exports to another country decrease and the imports increase, we are going to widen our trade deficit, right? Makes sense. Here's another way that we widen. So remember, trade deficit is we're spending more than we're making. Okay? We're spending more than we're making. So if we're exporting less, we're selling less, and we're buying more, absolutely, that's going to increase the trade deficit. Now let's think of this. If the number of tourists that come to the United States decrease, when tourists come, they spend money, or the number of U.S. tourists going to other countries increase, they're taking the United States people, the American citizens or the Americans are taking their money and spending it in other countries. Okay, so if we have less people coming in, less people bringing us money, more people going out and spending their money in other countries, both of these widen the trade deficit. Here's another way. Dividends, money paid on U.S. securities to foreigners, increases. If we, the United States, are paying more on dividends to people in other countries, we're giving them our money, right? So that will widen the trade deficit. If the dividends that we, the United States, are receiving decreases, we're bringing less money in. We're increasing the trade deficit. And then lastly, if foreign purchases of U.S. securities decrease, less foreign countries are purchasing our securities, less are giving us their money, or we are purchasing more foreign securities, we are putting more of our money, giving more of our money to another country, both of those widen the trade deficit. This is all very logical. This isn't what we need to memorize. This is what we need to understand. And then when we're asked a question, which of the following would be expected to increase the trade deficit, we can think about it logically and walk through the questions. I hope this video has helped. And if it has, subscribe, watch more, let me know what you think. This is the basic economics section, helping prepare you for the Series 65.